team coverage tonight of towns cleaning up from yesterday's storm.
And a strip club owner suing Grand Island churches. Your news starts now.
Closed captioning of NTV News is brought to you by CHI Health. Imagine better health.
NTV, Central and Western Nebraska's most watched late news. This is NTV News at 10.
The hardest hit areas across Nebraska from last night's storm are now in a state of emergency.
Governor Pete Ricketts made the announcement today.
As we flew over today, we saw more the utility crews out there continuing to work to restore power to folks in Roseland. I've declared an emergency, authorized an emergency declaration, and NEBA is working with the state agencies to monitor the situation and to provide any assistance that is needed.
The governor took a helicopter tour of the many areas impacted by the tornadoes and flooding, including Roseland, Hebron, Deschler, and parts of Lincoln. Mr. Ricketts urged Nebraskans to use caution and avoid taking unnecessary risks, especially in those flooded areas.
We'll get to our team coverage of last night's storm damage in just a moment, but first, we want to get to our current conditions right now.
Here's Kent Boughton live with what is the latest that we're seeing. Kent.
Colleen and Seth, still thunderstorm activity in our part of the region, mainly southeast Nebraska, but it's starting to break up quite a bit. It was severe earlier tonight. Still way too much rain falling in southeast Nebraska. There's lots of flood warnings, up to almost a foot of rain in some areas. We'll detail that and show you what you can expect for the weekend as well in your first alert weather. It's coming up shortly. Colleen.
Kent, thank you. Back now to our follow-up with communities that were hit hard with rain, wind, even tornadoes.
NTV's Megan Johnson was in Roseland last night and again this morning.
The village was a busy place again as neighbors, family, and friends keep chipping away at the debris scattered through half their community.
My crock pot over there untouched.
Erin Troush says she saw it coming.
Large tornado on the ground.
A storm spotting friend captured this view looking south from their Roseland home after rushing in to warn Troush and her 6-year-old daughter.
He video recorded part of it. A second tornado had come down and met with the first one. And then right after that happened, it started moving this way pretty quickly.
Troush says they then went for the basement, seen here in the last few frames, moments before the tornado struck their house and community.
Just feel and hear the rumble, and then once it moved over, our ears popped, and I'm pretty sure it's just the noise of the roof being ripped off.
Now family, friends, neighbors, and co-workers help the Troushes pick up what's left. The Adams County Emergency Manager says it's a similar scene all over the little village.
Fire departments are back from the local area, so they're out helping.
Emergency officials coordinate places to pile debris for later disposal as the county declares Roseland a disaster, hoping state and federal funding will be on the way.
It was a smaller tornado on the scale, but when you talk about a town of 250, this is devastating to them because they have a lot of work ahead of them to get rebuilt.
What is rebuilding? What is next? It's questions the Troushes say they're asking themselves too.
We have a place to stay tonight and last night and tomorrow night, but in a week when other people get back to normal life, where do we go?
But still, Roseland residents say they're thankful for the help they have and what the tornado didn't take.
Nobody was seriously injured, and that's by the grace of God. I don't know how that could be.
There are some funds set up already to help people in Roseland. We'll have some links to those in our web story at nebraska.tv. And one extra highlight, if you will, from this devastation, the Troushes say their aquarium was crushed by debris, but a friend found their 7-year-old goldfish alive in an upright coffee container, swimming in a little bit of rainwater.
Oh my goodness.
That seems hard to believe, doesn't
a miracle.
it? All right,
Thanks,
Megan. Thanks so much. Well, southeast Nebraska saw some of the heaviest storms with embedded tornadoes.
One of the towns hit hard was Hardy. NTV's Tanner Kaler was there today to speak with people affected.
Across town, you hear the same things.
It was on the ground by Montrose and Formosa coming our way.
Sounds of the cleanup after the storm.
He held himself against the door and with a piece of board and made sure we stayed safe.
The Fullers hid in this shelter, and after, their home still stood. So did the neighbor's home down the road. It's damaged, but other buildings on the property are gone.
In the chicken coop here, the corral here, there was a big red barn there.
Scott saw the tornado coming when he called his wife to let her know to take cover.
He saved my life. He called me just in the nick of time.
Sherry, in the house when it hit, took shelter under the staircase and prayed.
I heard all this rattling, really loud noise. It's terrifying. And then all the glass in the house broke out. And the chimney, when it hit, came down on the roof right there. I could feel the whole house move, and I thought I was going to be airborne.
Now, to give you just an idea of how strong those winds were, Sherry says the family had a spool that they were using as a table in the back of the house. She says the tornado took the spool, threw it over the house, and landed on this truck that was parked in her front yard.
I've lived in Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas, Nebraska, and I'm 50 years old, and now I've finally been hit by a tornado. They finally got me. But it didn't get me.
Despite the damage, the couple's still in good spirits, not soon to forget the time they came face to face with the tornado. Right?
Yes, at 5:03. It popped the battery right out of the back of my clock.
Hardee's fire chief telling NTV News 4 homes were hit. Thankfully, no reports of any injuries in Nuckolls County. Wow. From tornadoes to flooding, folks in nursing homes had to flee to higher ground when the floodwaters rose overnight.
These storms dumped inch after inch on towns like Hebron and Deschler, and that's where our Bureau Chief Steve White spent the day and continues our team coverage.
This part of the town kind of looked like the Missouri River going through it.
Disaster plans rushed away with the floodwater. No amount of planning could prepare the Deschler nursing home for a mass evacuation.
Our staff is absolutely awesome. The school, the superintendent, Dr. Meyer, opened the school. With a lot of help and a lot of prayer, we got everyone moved up there safely.
44 residents took shelter at the school before moving to nursing homes in other communities, while staff was cut off by the flood.
We couldn't get to work, people couldn't get home from work, so some of those have worked 20 hours because they couldn't get away, couldn't go home, couldn't get in.
The ditches are completely filled with water.
16-year-old Brianna Stewart was working when the skies opened up.
In the middle of cooking food and we lost power. We all started freaking out and everything, and everyone's like, just calm down.
With the 4-lane U.S. Highway 81 closed at Hebron, the old highway could carry only one lane of traffic while the waters went down. Many rural roads and bridges are washed out. In Deschler, firefighters were called into duty evacuating residents.
Good thing to be in Nebraska, and a small town's wonderful.
The water line was as high as a pickup bed.
This is what's left.
Residents who lived through Deschler's tornado 12 years ago say this damage will linger. But like that past storm, they will get through it.
People are all right. Staff is all right. God was good.
Steve White reporting. Now, Nebraska wasn't alone when it came to storm damage. 65-year-old Ruth Underwood is still in serious condition after being hurt in last night's storm in Burr Oak, Kansas.
The tornado destroyed one home, damaged 2 others, all belonging to different members of the Underwood family. NTV's John Jankowski has more from tiny Burr Oak.
Lene Akins piles up debris from Wednesday's tornado. She heard the news while she was at a local grocery store.
My cousin called me and told me that it crossed 36, and then I heard that I was in Burr Oak.
The first thing that popped in her mind was she hoped her 3 dogs were okay. Once the storm cleared, she was able to run to her pets, who were unharmed.
I was so happy. I could do the rest of it as long as my dog was okay.
Quentin Underwood was helping out with the cleanup.
What a mess, a disaster. Just try to figure out what's left, what can be salvaged, where's the animals.
He says one of the horses was injured and visited the local vet. He went over the property's damage.
It took the top of the barn off. It destroyed 3-4 green bins. We had, there's a couple chicken houses that are basically gone. The shed right here, the baler shed, it's gone. And then it tore up the house a little bit.
Underwood says the home can be saved. About a mile away, the home of Ruth Underwood destroyed. Here is how strong the storm was. Pickups were parked on this pavement, and the vehicles were pushed about 100 feet east. Family members and friends were helping out all 3 homes damaged in the tornado.
Well, it just knows that if you have trouble, somebody's going to come help.
Even though her home is in bad shape, Eakin says one day her and her family will move back to the house. As for Ruth Underwood, her family tells us she has a couple more surgeries lined up.
In other news tonight, Omaha police still on the lookout for a missing 5-year-old Nebraska boy. This after the vehicle in today's Amber Alert was located this afternoon. Police finding it near 23rd and Arbor Street in Omaha just before 3:30. On top of all of that, Josue Ramirez Marinero's toddler brother was found alive in a La Vista dumpster just yesterday. Cops working for hours to identify the boy, who was in stable condition, and then began searching for his family. According to the Omaha police, the boy's mom, Jesus Esmenia Marinero, was found dead last night just north of Lauritsen Gardens in Omaha.
We told you Tuesday, 2 Grand Island men started a petition to keep a potential strip club out of Hall County. Tonight, the man behind the strip club is responding with a $10 million lawsuit. Shane Harrington claims Keith Baumfalk and Dr. Shay McGowan defamed him by accusing him of promoting sex trafficking and prostitution. The suit is targeted at the 2 men, also Kent Mann and 3 Grand Island churches. Harrington says he believes McGowan is using the petition as just a publicity stunt to attract new customers to the Grand Island Dentist Center.
Nebraska Governor Pete Ricketts has made good on his promise to veto a proposed 6-cent per gallon gas tax increase. He rejected that measure shortly after lawmakers gave it final round approval today. If lawmakers can override the veto, the bill would incrementally raise the tax over 4 years to help pay for road and bridge repair, generating an estimated $76 million a year once fully implemented.
Farmers and ranchers who open their property to tourists could be shielded from certain lawsuits under a bill advancing through the Nebraska legislature. Senators gave the proposal first-round approval today. Ogallala Senator Ken Schilt says he introduced it to promote rural tourism and give farmers and ranchers another potential revenue source without the fear of lawsuits.
All right, Ken's forecast is coming up next. Plus, we'll talk to local experts about treadmill safety and what you need to know. That's tonight's Vital Signs.
And later we go to Kearney, where an elementary school student got a surprise she'll never forget. It's coming up.
NTV, where your news comes first, with Seth Denny, Colleen Williams, Ken Boughton weather, and Dave Greig sports. This is NTV News at 10. Time now for First Alert Weather with NTV Chief Forecaster Ken Boughton.
Well, a break for a big share of Nebraska as far as severe weather activity, where there was some over southeast Nebraska. The main problem in southeast Nebraska into Kansas was areas already under flood warnings getting more heavy rain on top of what they'd already had. Chances are back in the forecast tomorrow morning at 20%, 50 degrees at breakfast, 58 at midday. Well, we got breakfast and dinner and supper and all that confused, but midday, we'll call it that. 68 at supper time, and some of you may call it dinner as well, but it is a 40% chance of storms again in the forecast tomorrow night. That's a pretty good chance. So we again could see some isolated storms, and we'll be watching that, of course. Nearly 11 inches of rain fell at Hebron in a short amount of time last night. Almost 10.5 near Fairbury in the Byron area, 878, 8 1/4 almost, 8 1/4 at Hardy, and at DeWitt, 7 inches, 80 hundredths fell. Elsewhere then, we saw in the Lincoln area over 7 and 71, almost 7 3/4 inches, just over 6 inches, Superior, Davenport, 5 inches, 82 hundredths, and over 4.5 Guide Rock, and just over 4.5 at Frent. So way too much rain in southeast Nebraska. That's why the Weather Service has flash flood warnings all over the southeast part of the state into Kansas, parts of Iowa and Missouri as well. And it's because of those 5 to 11 inch rainfall amounts, and the rain remains heavy in some of those areas where the warnings remain in effect. Heavy rain running through the Kansas City area right now, isolated heavy thunderstorms in parts of northeast Kansas. Nothing, however, severe at this hour. We continue to see some very heavy rain making systems, though, in that part of the country, right ahead of a cold front trying to push through the state, and there is cooler air on the backside of that boundary, of course, and temperatures are dropping accordingly. 47 at Rapid City compared to 73 at Des Moines, where the dividing line of that front is, and warmer in Lincoln in the 60s, 50s elsewhere, and then as you head further west, we're seeing upper 40s. Overnight lows tonight, much the same as we're seeing actually outside right now. They're not going to change much because of the cloudy skies. Highs tomorrow will be in the 60s and 70s, and your 7-day forecast, it's going to be likely for thunderstorms Saturday night, a real good chance. And we see chances again tomorrow night at around 50%. Mother's Day, chances have decreased a little bit, about 30%. No rain in the forecast, but much cooler Monday. Temperatures will remain in the 60s through Thursday, more rain chances. Highs this time of year should average around 70 degrees. Of course, we were looking at the drought situation last week. We needed rain. Now, all of this rain, the drought is going to disappear in some parts of the state because of that. Yeah. But elsewhere, there's still a little drought.
Thank you, Kent.
Already.
We'll be right back. 47-year-old Dave Goldberg, a multimillionaire husband of the Facebook COO, died recently in a treadmill accident. Goldberg fell and hit his head on a treadmill. This was during a family vacation.
A freak deal. He suffered a traumatic brain injury. 6 years ago, Mike Tyson's young 4-year-old daughter was strangled by a cord connected to the machine. Treadmill accidents are really rare, but safety tips should be remembered.
And here's the safety clip. And you just attach it to any piece of your clothing. If you do trip, it's going to pull out and automatically stop the machine. It comes to a safe stop.
Nicole Durning walks through the basics of using one of the 17 treadmills here at the Kearney YMCA. Treadmills, one of the best-selling exercise machines in the United States, with nearly 28 million users. And believe it or not, last year, emergency rooms saw 24,000 injuries, all related to treadmills.
Apparently it happens more often than you think, but we have our very knowledgeable staff who go through trainings, and we just ask people to ask questions if they're uncomfortable.
And experts like Nicole say keep kids away from treadmills, both stationary and moving.
Making sure there's not cords around that the kids can trip on. Always supervising. I mean, if a little kid gets on a treadmill, you just never know. I think just being responsible is main, using common sense.
At the Kearney YMCA, they regularly service the treadmills. In fact, yesterday they did just that.
Okay, great story. Well, we'll turn now to sports.